and lean on each other. I think, as I said earlier, there's a lot of animosity sometimes between women, but just like this podcast and what you preach on here is we've got to support each other. If we don't have each other's back, we're never going to succeed. So it's really, really important.
Welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast. It's your girl, Kate Bryan. The One Girl Revolution podcast highlights the stories of everyday women who are changing the world through their lives. Every week, I talk to inspiring women and girls who are doing something incredible to make a difference in the world. Please subscribe to the One Girl Revolution podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number One Girl REVO. We're on YouTube at One Girl Revolution. That's the number One Girl Revolution. You can find all those details on our website, more stories, more videos, all of our podcast episodes, and so much more at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com. Before we get into today's episode, I was just in Chicago, and we talk about that in this episode, so I'm giving you a little bit of a spoiler alert. We're getting ready to release a really cool 3-episode video podcast series. If you subscribe to our email list, you probably saw a little bit about it, and you're going to be hearing more in the coming weeks, but here's a little teaser. This is something that I've wanted to do for a while, and I'm so grateful to our friends at Behold for making that happen. As if they're not busy enough with our upcoming second documentary, which I'm really excited to share with you all, they offered One Girl Revolution the opportunity to use their new studio in Chicago to record 3 video podcast episodes. So keep your eyes out for that in the coming weeks. One of the women featured in the video series is Kristen Girali, founder of Alive Rescue, who we've had on the podcast before, and she was the one that connected me with today's guest. On today's episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, I'm so excited to welcome Sarah Lauch, founder of Like Roo. Like Roo is named after a really special pup who Sarah rescued and then found out that he was terminally ill. Sarah and her friend ended up making a bucket list for Roo and spent the last 6 months of his life making his puppy dreams come true. After he passed away, Sarah founded Like Roo to encourage people to live like there's no tomorrow, to embrace life, and to help others with terminally ill pets. This episode is so fun, inspiring, and powerful. It will make you laugh. It will make you cry. You will just love Sarah, and you'll be so inspired by Like Roo. So without further ado, here's Sarah. Sarah, welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Thank you, Kate, for having me. I'm so excited. I saw your questions, but the biggest thing with podcasts is I kind of like to fly with it. So I'm ready for your questions you have scripted and anything else you want to fly my way. It's all
awesome.
Good.
I'm so excited to have you on. I feel like this has been a long time coming, even though it's just been a couple of weeks that we've been trying to make this podcast recording happen. But I'm so grateful for you. I can't wait to share your story and your life and your work with all of our listeners. But before we get into that, Sarah, I would love to know, who is a One Girl Revolution in your own life? Who is a woman or a girl that's inspired you?
Yeah, so this question is very interesting because I feel like it changes as you grow. You kind of start with somebody when you're young, and there's a reason that you go along the path that you go on. So obviously my mom when I was young, but being in the television field that I'm in now, there was somebody that came to my kindergarten class that was a local news anchor in a very small town in Pennsylvania. And I was just enamored by her. And that's really, kindergarten is the reason that I'm in television now, which to even think that you have a dream that young and be now 45 years old and living that is just really amazing. So that's kind of my TV career. And, I grew up with animals. We took every stray off the street. We had a pet pig, a pot-bellied pig. We had guinea pigs and rabbits and everything that you can think of in Pennsylvania. And so, my parents really taught me, to love everything, to love every animal. And, of course, living in farm country in Pennsylvania, we we also ate meat. And I am now kind of at the point in my life where I'm trying not to do that anymore because I've learned so much about the farming industry. It's a very complicated thing. but having them as role models of like trying to save everything that we could, and then fast forwarding to me moving to Chicago in 2004, and really once Facebook started, a few years after I moved here, I just latched on to the rescue community, and I was so inspired by so many women, and rescue and foundations like Live Like Roo are filled with just amazing, brilliant women who make things happen. I have no idea how we do it sometimes. But that community, 3, 4 years ago was really catty. There was a lot of backstabbing. There was a lot of, why are you doing this? Why should you do this? And in the last few years, it's been really nice because we've really embraced each other and helped each other, and, tried to, if somebody was doing something we didn't like, instead of attacking them or calling the Department of Ag, you ask them like, hey, why are you doing this? And can we help you? Or, instead of frowning upon owner surrenders, you try to help them instead of saying like, why are you surrendering your animal? So I think, and I know this is a long answer to a short question, but I think as you grow as a person, you kind of have to change your role models as you go, as you grow. And I also think, a lot of us when we're young, we like, famous people, stars, athletes, but it's also, and as much as I would have loved to been like, some kind of professional softball player or something, like or a singer, actually a singer would be like a better goal. You just have to kind of be realistic at times and make your role models something more that you can truly become. So I love looking up to, women that are really doing great things, especially in Chicagoland.
Yeah. And that I just was in Chicago filming a couple of things for One Girl. And I was so touched by that because even Kristen Durali, who is a friend of both of ours from Alive Rescue, she was sharing kind of the same thoughts, that she felt like, in Chicago, there were so many incredible women, especially just simply looking at the animal rescue community or just the animal community, all these people that are working in different areas to protect animals and support animals, how amazing these women are, and how women over the past couple of years have really bonded together. And they always say, women are stronger together. We're stronger together. But you really see that in Chicago, and you see that elsewhere too.
Yeah. And the thing is, I think here's what I've learned. And I think some people feel the same way. You get to a certain age and you're kind of like, what the hell am I doing? Like, why am I worried about what this person is doing? I need to worry about what I am doing, what is in front of me. Why do I care so much about what that person is doing? And if they're not doing it properly or the way I like it, like once you can get out of your head, and my friend Dawn, who runs Lulu's Locker, we also run like a program called the Hot Mess Express, where we save dogs that are pretty much actually not just dogs, it could be other animals, but we've only rescued dogs so far, but they're left for euthanasia. So they might have a mass, or they might be totally matted and the owner surrendered them. There's a lot of other rescues that take dogs like that, but she often, and she's taught me a lot because she's a bit older than me, sorry Dawn. She's like, Sarah, like just focus on you and what you're doing, because it's so important that if you let all of that other stuff get in the way, it's going to just drive you nuts. And it's like really good advice, and I also give it to people that are younger than me that are always texting me like, what is this, what are they doing? Just focus on what you're doing, and you don't have to worry about any of that extraneous BS that's happening.
It's so true. And there's so much work to be done. And so it's like you have to focus on what your mission is, your own mission is. And I feel like your army kind of builds itself. You find the friends and colleagues and other people that are supposed to be supportive of you as you move forward, because you're always going to find a handful of people. It's not going to be hundreds of people, but you're going to find a handful of people that are really supportive. And I know that that's what you all have in Chicago, which I'm really touched by.
Thank you. Yeah. It takes a while to get there, I think. And that's a really important point. What you said is, I think when I first started Live Like Roo Foundation, I was like, I just want to do it all, but you can't. Like, you get to a point even like the accounting, like now that I have an accountant, I feel so much better. I was trying to do everything at once. I was trying to do care packages. And once you can kind of let go of things and trust people, which is a really, really hard thing, especially as a female, you always want to have your hands in everything. Once you can let go and put people in positions to succeed that you can trust, it just grows. And again, another tough lesson that I had to learn, because I lost some really good board members and volunteers because they didn't understand why I was trying to do everything. And it was totally my fault. And it's something I've learned, in the past 2 or 3 years as well. I've learned a lot in the last 2 or 3 years, if you can't tell.
I feel like everybody has, when you think about the pandemic and so many other things that have happened over the past 2 or 3 years, but I think we're all moving forward and I can't wait to see what the future holds. But I want to talk about Live Like Roo. I want to talk about so many different things. But before we get into that, Sarah, you shared a little bit about your early life and growing up in Pennsylvania and your love for animals, where that came from. But I would love to hear a little bit more just about your early life. And now you're working in sports. So I'd love to hear how you ended up getting there.
Yeah. So, like I said, my family always had animals, and I just learned a lot about animals growing up, and kind of took that, into once I moved to Chicago and had a boyfriend who could help me take care of the dog. So the rest of that is kind of history. But I knew, so when I got to college, I was studying broadcasting, and I actually failed intro to television. And I'm like, ooh, I think I made a wrong choice. But here's the key with that. And this is nobody's fault, but when I was a kid in high school, I was very protected by my parents because I was the oldest. I paved the way for my brother. I was very good because they kept me in check. So when I went to college, it was the first time I had cable. It was the first time, obviously I was literally on my own. And I went crazy. I went crazy. I was 18 and I just partied and didn't study. And I didn't have really any structure. So I kind of was second guessing my dreams of being on TV. So at that point I wanted to be on TV. So I signed up to do news break on our TV station, and I melted down as soon as the camera went on. I literally was awful. So I said, ooh, I need to figure out something else. So I started to edit and do production work. Long story short, I interned at Comcast, what was Comcast Sportsnet in Philadelphia. And it was for a full semester, and I got hired before my internship was even up. So that's how I got into sports. And so I was an intern, and then I turned into an employee in Philadelphia, and I was doing some really cool things at a young age. And I went to work for George Michael of George Michael Sports Machine in Washington, D.C. My features that I was editing were seen nationally at, age 24. So I knew I did the right thing, but so many of my classmates that had graduated with broadcasting degrees had not finished with a career in television. So I felt so lucky. But I did not like living in Washington, D.C. So when they launched what is now NBC Sports Chicago, I moved here in 2004 and was working for NBC Sports Chicago until February of this year, when I was hired by NBC 5 Chicago, which is the local NBC station here, as the production manager. So that's kind of my path to TV that started in kindergarten with the anchor coming in and talking to us. It's pretty crazy.
It's cool to meet another woman who works in sports. And I think that I just was sharing with you a little bit about Amy Peterson, who's going to be on the podcast here, who used to work for the Detroit Tigers. And she was sharing how when she first got into sports, how there were very few women that were in sports. And now thankfully, like, things have started to really change. And you even see TV personalities and commentators on sports television shows. What was that like for you getting into sports as a woman? And like, where do you see things now?
Yeah, what's crazy is, so when I interned, it was 1998. So if you think about kind of the climate of women in sports at that time, like we had two female anchors, reporters, and they were really, really well known and well loved in Philadelphia, which is a crazy sports market, similar to Detroit and Chicago. But they, you know, they hit a lot of hurdles. I mean, again, Philly is very vocal. This is before social media. You have to remember that. So, you're kind of seeing things, in the paper, or they're calling the station and complaining. And I remember too, the first time I ever walked into a locker room, because it's kind of like it was always like this thing in my mind, like we didn't belong there. It was weird when a female went into the locker room. And so I was so nervous, I was so young, and there was like nothing to it. They treated us all with respect, including me. I will say that there's been times when I've not been treated well in a locker room, and I'm not going to name the team, but it's not the Chicago White Sox. I'll say that. And, just trying to get an interview with rap music blaring with swear words, where even if I got the soundbite, I would not be able to use it because of this noise in the background. And, that starts with not the players, but from the top. When you're trying to get sound from somebody during spring training and you can't get it because of the music that's playing, like, and they don't care, like, they know what they're doing. They're not dumb. So there's, and there's other great examples. The White Sox locker room, every time I went in during, a lot of it was spring training, like they wanted to talk to you. A lot of those players too, they didn't necessarily make the team once the season started, but those experiences, like, I'll never forget. I've never been treated poorly by a team or a manager, or, the PR staffs at the teams in Chicago are really, really good. Minus a few people. And that's all I'll say, since I'm still in this NBC family. But, I think a lot of the things that people think about women in sports have dissipated. It's pretty much non-existent at this point. Women are very respected, and sometimes even more respected, than their male counterparts. The White Sox actually have a statistical guru who is a young female who is absolutely amazing at her job. And it just goes to prove to you that it doesn't have to be a male in there to figure out baseball stats. So she's amazing. And you will keep seeing more and more stories like this, which I know that you are interested in these stories too. But I will say, it took a lot of people to pave that way. And I was kind of there, when it was just becoming okay for women to come into a locker room and not have to hear craziness about it.
Yeah. Well, I just love that you're in sports. I love seeing women in sports, and even women sharing their own experiences, because even some of the things that you shared there about your professional career, I think that a lot of women can relate to that, whether they work in sports or not. We've all had different experiences where you feel very respected, and then other instances where you don't. And really, it's not just women. I'm sure that everybody who's listening, no matter who you are, we've all had experiences like that. But I think it's so important to power through and to stand your ground and do exactly what you're doing. You're just changing the world through your work and your life and what you're doing with Live Like Roo. So before we talk about Live Like Roo, I want to ask you, tell us about Roo, and how did Live Like Roo start? Because I know it started with a very special pup.
Yeah, craziness. Easter in 2015, I went to animal control with a friend, and we were kind of looking for a dog to co-foster, but I wasn't like really committed to it. I was kind of like, we'll see what we find, So we went, and there was a dog that was like sitting in his cage so quietly, which immediately attracted me to him, because every dog, when you go to animal control, is jumping at the cage, like wanting to get your attention. And he was just sitting quietly. So we took him outside, and he definitely had issues urinating. I mean, it took him like a good 5 minutes to empty out. So we knew something was wrong. We had hoped that it would be, involve a neuter, and that's about it. And it was much more. So there was like a flu epidemic at animal control at that point. So any dog coming out of there had to be ISO'd for 3 to 4 weeks, depending on, how long they had been there, how long they had flu symptoms. So he had to go and stay at an isolation bed. We did pull him, just so everybody knows. And once he was done with that, we kind of co-fostered. His teeth had been ground down pretty much to like that nerve, like the gums, because we assume he was either eating rocks to stay because he was starving, or he was trying to, force his way out of some kind of entrapment, whether it was a cage or a crate or something. But his teeth were just awful. So he needed a dental. And when he went under for the dental, they noticed a mass in his groin area, and they diagnosed him with bone cancer. So I got that call like on the way to work, and I had to like pull over on 90, which if you know Chicago, it's like a huge highway in Chicago, because I was so upset. Like I was just like, what? Like, we thought like a simple neuter would help everything. And it was really hard to take. I think, whenever you save a dog one time, you kind of want to not have to save them a second time, especially that quickly. And we decided it was pretty bad. We decided not to do chemo because it pretty much wouldn't work. And decided just to give him a bucket list. And once we did that bucket list, it kind of went a little bit viral. I think seeing a pity, doing a bucket list, staying at the Waldorf Astoria in Chicago and on a boat and eating ice cream. People latched onto it. It's kind of a time when people, needed something like that. And a lot of media outlets picked it up. I think my goal was to try to have time with him and enjoy time with him and not worry about posting on Facebook. So it took a long time for us to make a Facebook page because, I didn't want it to be about that, but we had so many people hanging on to every move that I was getting bugged so much that I pretty much decided to post on there when we could. But he lasted 6 months. So he passed away in September, and, it was obviously really hard. And then we had all these people like, so what are you going to do next? And the rest is kind of history.
Yeah, what a cool story. And you think about Rue's life before being found by you, and who even knows? And I think that's a lot of dogs that are rescues. You don't really know what was in their past. Sometimes you can kind of piece things together like you even did about Rue's teeth and like, okay, it's one of these two things, but what a joy. And I'm sure that everything that you did brought so much light to his life, even though he lived only for 6 more months. I just can imagine that just changed his little puppy life.
Yeah, and you could almost see it there when I started in rescue, I used to just give rides to like really urgent dogs, not just like urgent as in they need to be rescued now. Well, they did, but like medically urgent, where they got hit by a car and they needed to get to the vet quickly, or maybe they were on a youth list, but they also needed medical quickly. And there's something that happens with a dog when you get them out of there, and it's a thing. And it's funny how we all kind of realized it, but I always sat them in my front seat. I know some people think that like they frown upon that, they want them crated in the back, but I wanted to be able to see the dog that I just saved from hell, basically. And they do this like deep sigh where they're like, oh, I'm safe, and it doesn't always happen in that car ride to wherever they're going, my house, the vet, a foster, a rescue facility. It can sometimes, happen in the home, like after it, but it is this thing. And it's just the best feeling when you see them realize that they're safe and that they're loved. And Rue did that. He did that on the way home. You could just see like there's a picture of him in the back seat of my car, and he just has this like huge grin on his face. And it's literally the best feeling because, he was really close to being euthanized. At a shelter like that, any owner surrender has pretty much zero time because the owner has signed the dog over to the city of Chicago, which means that dog is now property of the city. So in a full shelter, those are the dogs that are going to go first. And unfortunately, those are the dogs that probably are kind of more adjusted than strays because even if they've not been in a home, they've been around a person more than likely and not living in a yard, but at least been around a person. So, he was hours away probably from euthanasia is what we were told when we pulled him. So it's really a sad reality in general when you think of how many amazing dogs are lost in a situation like that. It's really sad. And Rue got a second chance. One of the hardest things that I've gone through is, when I was in rescue near the end, sorry, I'm still kind of in rescue, but when I was volunteering at Animal Control, Chicago Animal Care and Control, at the end, I was liaison between animal control and rescues. So I would do a lot of testing, food tests, tests with other dogs, that kind of thing. And I helped save a lot of dogs from there via rescues that I still keep in touch with the adopters and the rescues. And unfortunately, what's happening is that's so long ago now, like a lot of them are getting cancer and passing away. And it is like the worst feeling because you help to save them from hell and then they get cancer and pass away. So it's like so hard. It's one of the hardest things for sure.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite memory with Rue? One of the adventures that you went on that just was one of your favorite memories that when you think about Rue, that's the moment that you go back to?
Yeah, so you guys are going to laugh because it's when he went into the Waldorf Astoria and pissed on the edge of the couch. And everybody, the whole staff, I was like scared to go in there, especially with a pit bull because they have a weight limit. And this was a totally special moment for us that they let us in there, and somebody, paid a lot of money for our room for us to be there. And we were really nervous to go, and we had like the best suite, but he went in there and peed on the edge of the couch, a really nice couch, and the entire staff laughed, loved on him, cleaned up after him, told us don't worry about it. And like, that was to me like the best feeling. Like I just assumed it was going to be hoity-toity, and they totally embraced us and embraced him. And he was kind of like, oh, this looks way too nice for us. Let me just do this. And I think something like that, makes you happy and laugh is the best memories because there are a lot of sad moments, obviously in that journey as well.
Yeah. Well, shout out to the Waldorf for being so amazing.
Honestly, they treated him so well. He had like ice cream waiting for him. We had this huge suite. There was a dog bed. It was so nice.
Oh, that's so awesome. So after Rue passed away, you talked about how people were like, all right, what's next? So I'm guessing that was kind of the spark moment for when Live Like Roo started. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So, I basically started, when you're going through that cancer diagnosis, you feel like you're on an island, and you're not because so many people went through it. But I started by just sending care packages on my own. So everything that Rue loved, I put in a little box and I mailed it with my own money. And it was a blanket, a tennis ball, treats, a toy, and then a McDonald's gift card because he loved ice cream. A lot of people got burgers with it or nuggets, that kind of thing. So, I was spending a lot of money on shipping and supplies for these care packages. And I'm like, oh, let me just look up how to start this not-for-profit. And I mentioned this a lot. If I had to go back to that day where I was like, let me look at all this paperwork and see how much I have to pay. And if I knew what I know now, then I don't know if I would have done it. And so many people are like, Sarah, what are you talking about? The amount of paperwork it takes to start a not-for-profit is not that great. It doesn't take that much money either, but the amount of things that you have to do with taxes and the IRS and the state and the attorney general and all of that, like I would have hired somebody on day one to do all of that, because what happens, and my not-for-profit, I have a great not-for-profit lawyer she's freaking amazing. She said, listen, this happens all the time. You do something that you feel with your heart and it's a passion. And then you're, 2 years in you've reached the 300,000 threshold where you are audited and you're like, what have I done with my life? And it's really, really, really hard. But if you take away all that and you look at the pictures of a dog saying chemo completed, or, dogs with care packages with, blankets, and it's just, it's the best, and it takes away all of the stress. I think the biggest thing is my board and my staff absorb a lot of sadness. Unfortunately, this is not oh, we have an adoption today. Oh, we're having this event today. It's happy. A lot of it, unfortunately, is really, really sad. And especially our medical team, they get desperate emails. I mean, and if you look right now, we probably have 500 people waiting for assistance. And it's really, really hard, same on my end, I get messages from friends. What should I do? Should I do this? Should I euthanize my dog? Can you help? And it's nonstop. So there's got to be a time. And unfortunately, it's hard to just say, I can't right now. I can't answer this overflowing mailbox. I can't help you. I need you to go to our support group page and, kind of bounce this off other people. But that part of it is really hard. And, I give so much credit to my board and staff, because they really do go through a lot and see a lot of sadness. So those small moments of joy, which actually are huge moments, they just don't happen a lot, mean so much to us, because we put so much into it and it takes a lot out of us.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you're doing so much. So for people that are listening, what is Live Like Rue, the embodiment of it, and tell me about all the great work that you do.
Yeah, so what's crazy is how that name came about is, I would post on Instagram Rue's adventures just on my personal page. And one of the people that followed me, who I've never met before, she hashtagged Live Like Rue on there. And I'm like, what? That's brilliant. I was just like, yeah, it clicked, it worked. And, I send her every piece of swag we make, and I thank her profusely for giving us that name. But what it means is, you basically live like there's no tomorrow, which is what Rue did and what we all should do. I mean, it's hard sometimes to think that way, but, in this crazy world, you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. So, just living for today. And it's an important message, for everybody. It's not just for animals and for people on rescue. We preach it everywhere we go. So that's kind of what it embodies. And we pay medical bills. So if you had a dog and you paid, $3,500, and $2,000 of it was cancer related, we would kind of look through that bill. If people have estimates before they're going to the vet for a biopsy or an amputation, we try to commit what we can to that. And we just hit the $1 million mark in December, of $1 million in grants given out. So
congratulations. That's amazing.
Thanks. Yeah, in just under 5 years. So hitting that is crazy. It's just a crazy number when you think about it. And then we do the cancer care packages as well. So those are our two main things. I think cancer care packages are more important than anything, because there's a lot of hopeless people out there, that need something to smile about, and seeing their dog excited about a piece of mail that they got is great. I should mention, we also do a Booker Fund. The Booker Fund is for basically terminal animals, and we get photo shoots for them. They can stay in a hotel overnight like Rue did, and we pay for the hotel. So it's for the owner to, kind of forget about the diagnosis and enjoy a night out. We've done steak dinners. So pretty much the Booker Fund can be anything. We've sent wagons to animals that can't walk anymore. Also, like, a really important fund for people going through probably one of the hardest times in their lives.
It's just incredible, and it's the little things too, sometimes, that we can all do, whether it be for our pets, like you shared. I mean, even some of the things that you did with Rue, Sometimes it's the little things, getting them a little ice cream or just something that can just like because we all experience that too in our daily lives. Sometimes
Mhm.
somebody does a little act of kindness and it just changes our whole perspective. So as much as you're doing a lot of big things, I think the little things like the care packages can have such an impact, which is incredible.
Yeah, and even the photo shoots, like if I go back, I wish I had more pictures of Rue. Like I have like 3 pictures of Rue and I. Like, and for people that are about to lose their dog or cat or guinea pig or horse, like those memories of like a professional photo shoot are priceless. They really are. And the photographers that donate their time, I mean, we've never paid for a photographer. They love it so much. Like they're so touched by what we do and by what those photos mean to those people that they always ask me, like, Sarah, put me at the top of the list for the next one, because it's something that they wouldn't normally do, you know. And it's so nice how many people in our community have given back to us in so many different ways.
Yeah, so that's incredible. Sarah, I love stories, obviously. I know you do too. I'd love to hear a story or two of animal that you supported, maybe a family and their animal that you guys have supported. Is there a story or two that you could share?
Yeah, and actually this is a recent one that I think a lot of people can appreciate. And it also shows like what an amazing community Rue supporters are. I mean, I can make a post about needing a certain amount of money and we have it. It's just incredible. And even last year we blew all of our numbers out of the water, all of our old records out of the water. And it was a year when a lot of people lost their jobs, lost their family, didn't have a lot of money, but somehow still found a way to support us, which I think is amazing. So 2 weeks ago, I got a handwritten letter in the mail, which is not rare, but it was asking for help for their dog. Like usually get thank you notes or, a donation that says this is in honor of, but this was like a letter and it had a bunch of pieces of paper behind it. So I'm like, oh, what is this? I need to open this. And it was from a woman who basically rescued a dog from hell. His owner had been killed in a trucking accident, and the family took the dog. And unfortunately, Dandy and the resident dog did not get along, so he was put into the yard in a fenced-in cage in October, and left there for the winter. So not able to come inside. Um, so this woman was a census taker and noticed that he was out there and asked the family if she could please take him. And they said yes. And she took him to the vet right away. She took him to the groomer first because he was so matted and for his ears were frozen that she couldn't even get through them with anything. And the groomer said, oh, he has some masses on him. You need to take him to the vet like immediately. So she ended up getting him vetted, like just normal vetting, and then took him to the oncologist within a week of getting him, which this woman is just amazing. And the oncologist basically said, yeah, he needs surgery to remove these. The woman is 72. She's retired, quote unquote, with 2 part-time jobs. So how this is a story of a person that we're going to help is that she's retired with 2 part-time jobs. And, those jobs were really tough during COVID because she was not getting hours. So immediately, like my heart went out to her. She had attached every bill that she paid, the oncology consult, the all of the lab testing, the blood testing, and all of that. So, I called her the day I spoke to the board and asked them if they were okay with us helping her. And of course, my board loves these stories. I usually, I have to ask them to be sure because it's a big chunk of money, but they're like, oh my God, this is like exactly the type of person we want to help. And meanwhile, she sends me like her tax return to show me how much she made last year. Like, it's just like so genuine. And she cried on the phone when I told her that we would help. And she was just like blown away that a complete stranger, which I'm not really a stranger, it's live like Rue. So, but she was just floored. So a few days later, I put the fundraiser up. I said, if we raise, so the surgery is $5,000. So I said, if we raise $2,500, Live Like Roo will match that. So we will pay for the surgery. So 6 hours later, we raised $2,500. It's just amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we ended up, somebody actually matched it. So we raised $5,000. So I told her, I told her when I called her, I have to raise 2,500 to commit 5,000. And so I called her the next day and I said, guess what? She's like, what? She was like so nervous. I'm like, we raised it all and I can pay your $2,000 bill that you sent me. So I was able to pay not only for her upcoming surgery, I was able to pay for Dandy's bills from before. So it's just like a perfect example of Live Like Roo people coming and supporting us and then somebody matching it and us having even more money than we ever even asked for. It's just truly special.
I think there are so many people in the world that want to help, but they oftentimes don't know how. And so when you present something like that, that makes it really easy. Like you throw up a fundraiser on social media. I see them all the time. I know people that are listening see them all the time. And even if you give $5, that makes a massive impact. And especially like you're sharing different times, you have matching donors. And so if you donate $5, it's actually $10,
Mm-hmm.
but all those little things matter. And people just need to keep their eyes out for opportunities to support great causes like the work that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, the one thing I hear all the time is sorry, it's not more. And I tell people every single penny helps us. I don't care if you can only donate $5. All it takes is 10 people to donate $5 and look at where we are. So, even our monthly donors, they're the ones keeping us afloat during these really tough times when we can't hold in-person events. Like knowing that we have that monthly donor money coming in every month is huge for us. And no amount is too small. Like I never want anybody to apologize for the amount they're donating because honestly, and it just is amazing to me how many people support us. This thing is only like 5 years old. It's just so refreshing and nice and still unbelievable to me that people have embraced us so much.
Yeah. So, Sarah, I know that you have big plans and big dreams for Live Like Roo. What's next? And what, like in your dream of dream worlds, where do you hope that Live Like Roo goes from here?
Yeah, it's so funny. People always ask me this, and I can't even think about tomorrow, let alone 5 years. I
Right.
mean, yeah. We really do take it day by day. And to be honest with you, and I say this all the time, I don't have like a lot of money in our bank account. If there's money there, it's going to people. There's not like some 100,000 surplus that's sitting there. Like if we have it, it's going out, and I really press our medical team to pay bills if we have it. But obviously, I would love to do this full time. Eventually, it took us 3 years, 4 years to even pay staff because I didn't want to take away from, people that needed us. It's a really, really hard thing to figure out. How can I do this full time where I can devote myself to it every day? Because right now I'm working about 50 to 60 hours a week. And it's really hard to find time to do Live Like Roo stuff. So, I would love to do it full time. My husband says, if you're going to do it full time, you need to also get a part-time job to keep up, which I know. But, the staff is growing every day. Our board is growing. We have an advisory team now that really helps with fundraising and volunteers and other things that come along. But I just want to be able to help more people. I think the biggest thing that we look at is how many people we help per year, and we always want that number to grow. It's not just a monetary thing. We gave out this much per year, but we helped this many people, and that to me is so important. It's so important to be able to help as many people as we can, and we will always help rescues as well. So if there's ever a dog in a shelter that has a mass or a dog in a foster home that has a mass, we 100% will always cover that and sponsor that animal until they're adopted pretty much or out of that shelter. So important note there.
Yeah. Sarah, I know that your own experience with Rue has obviously been very important, an important point in your life, or a pinpoint or a suddenly moment. And then you shared growing up how your family always had animals, and that's why animals are so important to you. But if you could get to the very root of what you do and why you do what you do, what would you say that is?
Yeah, I know what it is. And that's funny you asked this. So in high school, I was kind of just like, I wasn't that smart. I was friends with everybody. I didn't make the cheerleading team. I couldn't make the varsity softball team. And when I got to college, not only was I partying, but all of these doors opened where I didn't have to like try out. Like I could kind of join the rugby team. I could be on the newspaper. I could be the sports editor at the newspaper. I could join Newsbreak. And I think because of all the doors that closed in high school, when I got to college, I wanted to do everything. And it helped kind of mold me as a person. What's funny about this story is, you know, I have like a lot of bad thoughts about high school. Like I just didn't like high school. There's a lot of reasons why, but last year I was selected for my high school Hall of Fame because of the success. Yeah, and it's not an FU, but it's kind of like it brings me back to the beginning when of this interview. Your role models don't have to be singers and athletes and musicians and movie stars. Like they can be somebody like us. I'm gonna get teary. And it doesn't have to be you know dramatic. Like it can just be, I want to be better, and I'm gonna follow this path instead of that one. But I think I'm a good example of saying like, well, she wasn't the best, athlete or scholar or person or whatever, but she still like made something of her life, which I think is like an important message for anybody. I'm not perfect. I created this awesome foundation. I made myself a good career, but I worked my ass off for it. It wasn't easy. It was really hard at times. And there's a lot of bad things that happened too in my life to make me get here. So anyway, it's just crazy how it has come full circle where I can kind of say to the cheerleaders that looked at me like, oh, she didn't make the cheerleading team, but they're not in the Hall of Fame now. And as much as that's a small thing, it's also really meaningful to me because it just says that people that knew me in high school also chose me for this amazing honor and have like recognized what I've done in the world, which is great.
One of my favorite quotes, Sarah, and I have it on a bunch of different things, little cards, and friends have sent me this saying, and it says, she needed a hero, so she became one. And you just sharing that story, I think that we all are one girl revolutions, right? And sometimes you don't see it, but life comes full circle. And I think sometimes some experiences, I love that you shared that from high school, because some things we have to go through in our life, really difficult things. And, this is not to turn a negative into a positive, but sometimes we go through negative things and it becomes clear now, like you're sharing, like, oh my gosh, I came through all of that. And that was all kind of leading me to where I am now. And who knows what your life would look like had your high school experience been different. And yeah, I just think you're incredible. And you are a hero. You are a one girl revolution. And you're such an inspiration. Everything that you're doing, Live Like Roo, and just the way you're living out your life is so inspirational. So thank you for just being you.
Thanks, Kate. That's nice. And it is a good way to put it. Sometimes, like I said, I think sometimes you got to just do what you got to do to make yourself happy and know, that you're doing the right thing. And it's never easy. I think it's funny when sorry, not to rant, but I think it's funny when a musician or like a movie star or somebody like that says, you can do it. Like you can be famous and get where I am and make millions, because they are in that moment. And of course, like they believe that because it happened to them, but it's so rare. And I think by redefining, like you just said, who our heroes are, and maybe they're not the most popular people, and maybe they're not, the best people in the world, but they're somebody that you can at least model and pattern your life after. Like, I think that's really an important point.
Sarah, I just love spending time with you, and I love everything that Live Like Rue does. For people that are listening, what can they do to support your work and everything that you're doing?
Yeah, I used to say when people ask this, just come to one of our events and have a beer with me, because that means the world to me. But we can't do that right now. I just think it's so easy to kind of entrap people in that social moment with wine or beer. But yeah, obviously, livelikeRue.org. You can find everything there. Even, share us. I think, with Facebook and social media, it's tough to get new people to latch on to your foundation, because it's the same people seeing the posts every time. So if you can share anything we do, and obviously if you want to volunteer or anything, you can email me directly, sarah@livelikeRoo.org. It's ROO. And we always welcome new people. Like I said, we have a new advisory board who I'm really leaning on, and there's endless things that you can do and help us with. So thank you, Kate.
Yeah, and I'll be sure to post all of that in the show notes so people can easily get in touch with you and follow you. And I always say the easiest thing that anybody can do to support the work that you're doing, that anybody is doing, doesn't even cost any money. Because like you said, you can just share on social media, follow if you see a fundraiser, and even if you can't donate, share it, because it might touch somebody else's heart and they might donate in your stead. So what can people do, Sarah, in their own communities? I'm always curious about this. Obviously, they can support your work and donate. But what would you say to people in their own communities, whether they live in Detroit like me, or they live in Southern California, or wherever they live? What can they do to live like Rue, or what can they do to emulate Live Like Rue's message?
Yeah, so there's a few things. I mean, one of the biggest things I learned that I talked about a little bit earlier is just to try to stop judging people. If you see somebody and they have a dog with a mask hanging off of them, instead of being like, "Ooh, what's that?" Like, maybe tell them about us. Give them our information, help them instead of scorning them. And you never know, like, that dog might not be eligible for surgery. We've had dogs that have had volleyball-sized masses on them, and they can't operate on them because they're 13 years old, or their blood work came back bad. So, we definitely are a foundation that tries not to judge. Again, it's another thing that it took me a long time to learn, that I would sit at animal control and I would be like, "Oh, look at all the owner surrenders today." That doesn't help anything. Like, you need to talk to people, let them know about us. I think that's really important, is to, again, you can spread our message any way you can. And also important in your own life to live like there's no tomorrow, live like Rue, because things happen very quickly, and you never know about tomorrow. But that's probably my most important message, besides don't judge people, and send them to us for help if they have any masses.
Yeah. Well, Sarah, I am just so grateful for you. And I have one last question, because I always end this podcast on that question. And it may be a thread from something you've already said, because you're so full of wisdom, and I have no idea what you're going to say to this question, but I'm going to ask you anyways, because this podcast is all about women and girls. I want to ask you, if you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
Wow, that's a good one. I like that. Probably stay strong. A lot of times we are getting judged or second guessed, but if you stay strong, that's really the most important thing. And lean on each other. I think, as I said earlier, there's a lot of animosity sometimes between women, but just like this podcast and what you preach on here, is we've got to support each other. If we don't have each other's back, we're never going to succeed. So it's really, really important.
Sarah, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and thank you for all the incredible work that you're doing with Live Like Rue.
KB, thank you. I have loved this. I'm psyched to see what you do next. I'm definitely following everything you do. So I think it's so important that you're giving so many great females, and not just in the animal world, everywhere, this platform. So thank you, Kate.
Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number one girl REVO. And you can find more information on One Girl Revolution at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number one girlrevolution.com.